Welcome, everybody. I appreciate you tuning in today. As you can see, our text line here is loading at the bottom of the screen, so text us in with questions or comments. My name is Josh. This is Robert, and we are here to talk to you about agorism, however you want to pronounce it, and free market economics and how that works with the government, or without government, more accurately. I think of agorism as the economy functioning apart from government. In other words, living in a way as freely as you can without distraction from the state, without regulation from the state. Now, there's no such thing, it's important to note, as an unregulated market. There's always a regulated market. And it's just a matter of, is the state doing it? Is the government doing it? Or is the market actually regulating itself? Is the consumer the one regulating the government?
All
Sorry,
right.
everybody, for some technical issues, but we are on the Liberty on Caffeine podcast, porcupinepundit.com. This is now my second time being on this show. Matt Wobble and I were on last time, along with a couple of other hosts, including Will Detmering, and it was great. We had a great conversation about agorism with a couple of individuals, and we're back on. We're back on discussing what agorism is, and so please, if you have comments or questions about what agorism is, your experience with agorism, individual exit stories, things of that nature, then let us know. And we have a text line floating across the screen at the bottom. Does anyone watching have experience with cryptocurrency? That's a good question too. Whenever you think about agorism, which is again is a way to live life as a free consumer. Awesome. I think we're back on. Awesome.
So,
So,
Josh,
Mr. Roberts, how long have you known about agorism? Would you describe yourself as an agorist? What do you think about it? What do you like about it? Can you pitch it to me?
Can I pitch it to you? Okay. Um, let's see. I'm not even sure I would come at it from this angle first, but first of all, I think the biggest thing is that I look at the things a little different than you guys do.
Robert, are you still there? I'm sorry. I think I lost visual. That's okay. Just some technical difficulties, folks. We'll get these kinks sorted out as well as we can.
okay, Josh. Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you. Yeah. One of the things that's great about agorism is free market solutions. And if you think this technology is tricky, can you imagine if it was something that was done just good enough for government work? You know, right? The cool thing about something similar to this is we have so many competitors. Out there. For instance, we're using StreamYard right now, which is a great little program that connects to both YouTube and also to Facebook Live. And so if anybody has comments that are coming in on either of those two places, we should be able to see it. So here we go. I think we do have a comment right here. What about diamonds? Who regulates diamonds? Excellent question by Mr. Peter Kal Kalbacher. I think I'm saying that right. Kalbacher. So Peter wants to ask, what about diamonds? Who regulates diamonds? Go ahead, Josh.
diamonds in terms of natural resources. In a way, the price is set by the consumer. Would you agree with that, Matt? The consumer decides how valuable it is to him as an individual. The government doesn't need to be involved to say, well, diamonds are worth this much for society.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on a part of like the bigger picture, but I think you're really hitting on something good. I wouldn't necessarily that a price is ever set, but it does fluctuate based on consumer demand and based on the actual supply. So it really is just a law of nature of supply and demand. And so if diamonds seem to be too expensive or too cheap, even, it's really a matter of supply and demand. If all of a sudden we discovered a gold mine, for instance, that just with a minimal amount of work meant that the amount of gold in the whole world all of a sudden was 20 times as much. Well, instead of using it for barter or a currency or something of value, we might start paving roads with it. But until we're in a place where the roads really are paved with gold, gold is going to be very, very valuable because it's a limited quantity. Same thing with diamonds. And I think what Peter's pointing to is, what about blood diamonds? What about the way people come about getting them sometimes? And I wouldn't say that the market is either moral or immoral. The market is more like amoral, in the same sense that gravity. You wouldn't say that gravity was moral or immoral, but we are thankful for gravity because otherwise we would float off into space. But if somebody were to use gravity, say, to end their lives by jumping off a tall building or a cliff or something to that effect, we still wouldn't say that gravity was immoral. It just is. It's like a law of nature. The same as supply and demand is a law of nature. Do you think that helps, Josh, or do you want to add something to that?
No, I completely agree with that. I think that a good starting point, and this was a book recommended by the man I'm talking to, Matt Wavell, is Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. There's other books as well. I definitely like to read about economics. Friedman is good. Thomas Sowell is good. But you're correct. Supply and demand are things that just exist. They are laws. And to try to ignore them is when you get into economic trouble.
Right. Absolutely. All right, Josh. Now we're talking today more about agorism and counter economics. Diamonds might really come into play here, but let's talk about the currency of choice, the disruptor that we hear a lot about. A lot of times people just call it Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is really only one of many cryptocurrencies. So in general, cryptocurrency, or let's just call it any alternative form of payment, whether it's barter, gold, silver, anything other than the US dollar. What do you think about that as far as creating a disruptor that says, we're not going to be held to the dollar?
I think it is necessary. I think it is a way to live as free as possible. Obviously, you don't want to go to extremes as far as investments. But the thing is, people tend to think of something like Bitcoin as an investment when really you are, in effect, by using it, living free. You are really trying to get away from the Fed-backed currency, which this makes me think of really when Ron Paul became a big deal. He starts talking about the Federal Reserve. And that's kind of what the heart of agorism is, limiting the influence of the state on economics. And it's funny, you mentioned counter economics. I actually thought that the viewers that we have on right now may be wondering what agorism or agorism is. And so I actually pulled it up on Wikipedia and I'm kind of looking at it. And are you familiar with the libertarian philosopher Edward Konkin?
I have heard of him. Yeah, EK3 or something to that effect. Yes, I have actually. He did a book called, what was it? I don't know. You probably mentioned it, but he did write extensively on agorism, and some seem to think that there's more of a left right in agorism, but as we view, and Diamond is a great way to remember this, as we view liberty, we don't really see it as a left right paradigm in between. What's far left or far right. We really see it more as an up down in a diamond. which says, is it more free or less free? Is government controlling, or is the market and people and individuals' decisions controlling it? And I would say agorism is right at the very top of that diamond, whereas complete government control is at the very bottom of that diamond.
Well, I think it could be said that agorism is toward the top, because at the very top, I think you've got something, if not anarchy itself, very close to it. Whereas agorism, I think of as a system where you do have a government, but you are living free from it as you can. You're hiding, and that's not in a bad way. It's just from the corrupting influence of the state.
Right.
And by the way, Justico, thank you for your comment. That's a really good point about Mises.org. That's a wonderful resource. Actually, when I first started reading about liberty, Matt got me into that website. And I have a lot of stuff from Ludwig von Mises, and brilliant individual. I don't know, Matt, would you classify him as someone that approved of agorism?
Oh, LVM, Ludwig von Mises. Absolutely. And one of the best quotes that I have from him, and I'm going to butcher it, I'm sorry, but it goes something to the effect of, there's either market or the state. There is no third option. And what he's saying basically is this, you can have water and you can have poison, but once you mix them, what do you have? You still have poison.
Poison water. We have poison, yes.
Yeah. And so when you start mixing the way that Mussolini did, and he said that fascism is basically the government and business in partnership together. And we hear of these today, and we try to talk good about them. And amazing number of South Carolina politicians fall right into the same Mussolini fascist communication when they say stuff like these public-private partnerships. Well, that ought to scare everybody that loves freedom. Public-private partnerships is exactly what Mises was talking about when you mix poison with water. There's either the market or the state. There is no third option. And what we're really talking about with agorism is how to have market without the state. Mm-hmm. And Peter's asking a great question. I wish he would explain a little further when he means a promissory note or an option to buy, but how about a favor owed? That's interesting.
Would that be in reference to his aforementioned diamond question?
Could be. I'd love to have him comment a little further on this one. A favor owed versus a diamond. In other words, if somebody gives you a diamond, do you owe them a favor? I think you could really go a long ways with that. For instance, if you gave a fiance a diamond, does she owe either following through on the engagement on into marriage, or owe you the diamond back? In other words, is it really a gift, or is it a payment forward on a contract of some sort?
I was going to mention the term contract. I think that's a pretty good way to put it. Not always, not to every couple. I can't speak obviously for how every couple sees it, how the man usually presents the diamond. But yeah, it could be seen as not necessarily a favor owed, but I guess in a way you're promising your future to them if it's in marriage.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know what. Maybe Peter's looking for his diamond back. Or maybe we need to have a couple words with Mrs. Peter. I'm not sure where he's going with this, but I think it's an interesting question. However far we can take it.
Well, diamondback is also a kind of snake, so there you have to depend on what kind of diamondback you're talking about.
Right. He did say earlier something about a promissory note. Let's show this right here. Promissory note or an option to buy. Okay. And I think what he's saying is, how would the market without the state kind of regulate the idea of somebody who made a promissory note, but then didn't finish, say, paying off the mortgage, and then wanted to refuse to leave the house that they hadn't completely paid for. There's a lot of things similar to that. We currently have that a lot in people who repo vehicles, and this is probably a lot easier to explain than repoing a house. That's a little more complicated, I'm sure. But if you get at some buy here, pay here now type of establishments, if you don't make your weekly $200 payment, $150 payment, whatever, on these really high interest car loans, what they do is they have a little code that expires, and at the end of that week, you can't turn your vehicle on. You can't move the vehicle. And so you have to call them, make the payment, they give you the code, the vehicle's back on. So the car doesn't go all that terribly far within that week. And there's also GPS tracking, so they know where to pick the car up from. And I would imagine that a lot of stuff like that is a way to mitigate loss, and it helps people do business in what I would call an untrusting relationship. For instance, deals done on a handshake are actually more at risk with government, because what if the person you're shaking a hand with happens to know the local judge or a lot of the local politicians that are going to let him slide on just a lot of different things? But if, for instance, you had a contract that was on the blockchain, you could have it where it automatically pays out a set-aside amount to the person when the other person doesn't fulfill their end of the obligation. So there's a lot of neat things you can set up, and that will basically like a trust fund that would pay the wronged party, and a lot of that stuff can be automatic. Anyway, market without the state. I think there's a lot of things that can be done without the interference of a monopoly of force. A lot of things.
So this kind of leads us to an interesting question. You talk about market without the state. Let's say someone is currently running a business or just living their life under the state. What's the best way? What are the best first steps they can take in order to live in an agorist way, a way that is free from government tyranny?
The best way to live without the state. Wow. There was a great character that we read about in a book called Atlas Shrugged. And he was helping physically remove people from a economy that was not free and help them escape to an economy that was. He goes by the name of, do you know?
John Galt. But who is John Galt?
Who is John Galt? And a good answer to that is every last one of us needs to be a John Galt, right? And I see Josh here as a John Galt. If you look at my Facebook page, you'll see my nickname is John Galt.
That's right.
Here we go. Things like that is, how do you help somebody get out of the system? Now, one of the things that we hear about a lot, and I have a younger brother that did this, he moved off grid. He's out in the middle of Nowhereville, Texas. And when you find that spot, you still got another half an hour down a dirt road to get there. For real. I'm surprised he has any form of internet access, being technically on the grid, because he still has power from the grid. He has a way of generating himself if he'd like, which is good, because East Texas, had quite a bit of problems with power lately. That was just to make the Californians feel right at home, because they've had rolling blackouts and other problems like that, just like any other socialist country would. But he is not on the water. He pumps his water into like a 33,000 gallon storage tank, filters and cleans it for good use. But that's going off grid. And by going off grid, it feels like you might as well be on the moon. That's a long ways from what we would call civilization. But how do you do that and stay? Well, it's kind of tricky, but there's a lot of things you can do to at least, I wouldn't say go Galt, but go partway there. And these are great. If you have enough land, a little freedom garden in the back. And if you get a little bit ambitious after you've gone a couple seasons and you get good at it, maybe you'll start planting enough that you'll be able to start bartering or selling to your neighbors a little bit of the excess, or canning it. Getting prepared to be able, I don't mean prepping, but getting prepared to hunker down in cases of unrest. That's prepping. I always recommend that people invest in precious metals. And sometimes precious metals is gold and silver, but depending on what's going on, you could really consider precious metals to be lead, and brass. So don't forget those precious metals as well. Peter
That's a
says,
good point.
hidden assets that appreciate. Interesting. And we're talking about how the market regulates versus the state regulates. Hidden assets that appreciate. I kind of like that idea. Let's say we have a hidden asset and it appreciates. I think the owner of that, who by all rights, owns the profit, the product of his labor that went and made that investment. The question really then becomes, why would he owe anybody anything on the fact that it appreciated? And maybe Peter is pointing out that he doesn't like the theft of taxation, and it would be better in a totally free market that our hidden assets that appreciate don't have a portion of it stolen. Let me give you a real quick, for instance. If you held a number of investments, one of them that comes to mind is cryptocurrency. If you held it less than 365 days, any of the profits, the appreciation off of it, you have to pay a 35% tax on that. If you wait till a day after, you wait till you've held it for a whole year, you're going to pay 15%. And I would take offense to that 15%. I think that in both cases, you should owe exactly zero to a party that had absolutely nothing to do with it. Josh, what do you think?
They're not working at your job. They're not the one putting money into Bitcoin, into Ethereum, into Monero. So why do they have a claim? How do they have a legitimate claim to your property, what you have put money into? I don't see that.
Right. There you go. Okay, Josh, want to tell us a little bit about the Mises library? How do we get there, and what can you find there?
Mises.org, that's the website that you can go to, and there's a library tab that you'll see on the side. And I haven't read everything on there. I think that Bob Murphy is a really good resource. He does some really good free market economics as well. But just read the list that's there on Mises.org. What would you point people to first?
Oh, here we go. I'm going to try to put that link up here. Mises.org.
There we go.
Library, something to that effect. Wow. We did a little show a couple of days back about our favorite books. We went over about 25 books, actually, among 5 different people. That's excellent there, Justico. He points out that you can order a box of economics in one lesson for free. And I think you can also do this, or maybe he's pointing to this, at fee.org. Okay. The Foundation of Economic Education, as in fee.org, is a great resource. Here we go. Very good. Fee.org. What I found is when we went over these 25 books, is almost every last one of them, probably 20 out of 25, were available at Mises.org library. And again, this is a free library. Why not make really good use out of a free library? Here we go.
Free meaning actually free, not free meaning taxpayer funded.
When we talk terms, one of the best things to do is to immediately question everything. And I saw a little little cartoon the other day that said the parent was telling the child, question everything, and the child said, why? And I think my answer to that would be, good job, son. Why? Yeah, there you go. Even including me. And if you hear anything that's like complete utter garbage coming out of my mouth, the most friendly thing you can do is to get in touch with me. My phone number is actually down there at the bottom right now. Text me, whatever. Get in touch with me and call me out on it. Say, I think you don't quite know all the details here. And I'm like, I am ready to learn, because truth is much more important than opinion. And my opinion's been wrong more times than I can remember. And the only way that you can get better is to actually study the truth and you have to be, it's difficult because you have to be constantly willing to readjust, truly open-minded. True intelligence is when you can adjust a previous opinion to match new information. And most people nowadays really would just prefer to have somebody repeat what they already assume. In other words, whatever your assumptions are, I'll repeat that. Now we're besties. When really a true friend will give you something that we call tough love. There's really no such thing as true love besides tough love. Anything that's not tough love is really just enabling and not very helpful at all. It's really enabling self-destructive thought patterns. And that's what we have. People that have been all masked up, people that think, let's run this experimental vaccine, people that think all kinds of things. When other people go, yay, that's wonderful, I'm so glad you're doing that. Sometimes they haven't really studied whether what that person is doing is self-destructive or actually helpful. Because if somebody's like, yay, I'm going to go do this, and you realize that it's something self-destructive, a true friend tries to warn them about it. Does that make sense?
Oh, of course. I mean, that's exactly right. You have to have someone or some people in your life who will point you to what is correct, what is right, whether it's on economics or other things.
We need to get this Justico to come on here. He adds a lot to it. And also Peter, I wish Peter would be longer in his questions and even in his comments, because I think Peter is adding a lot to it. Peter K. and Justico Mitchell, because these guys really do add a lot to the conversation as well. Now, the guest that we were trying to have on, there's no way I can speak for him. I don't know that he's still watching. He had some technical issues because he does not have high-speed internet where he's at. He's probably more of an agorist than the rest of us, being nearly off-grid in many ways. He said way out in the boonies. And he said at best he has like a 4G hotspot. And we were trying to use 2 of those streams, and I think that they probably just conflicted. Or even one of the streams probably wasn't going to be good enough. But, yeah.
Well, I'm just looking at Mises.org right now, /library, and there's a section for understanding money mechanics. There's a section for Austrian economics, Econ 101, books by Mises, books by Rothbard, a list of libertarian books, and one about war and foreign policy. And we should do another podcast at some point about foreign policy or maybe Rothbard. But looking to agorism specifically, I think that a lot of it is tied to Bitcoin. And I'm trying to think. I think it first started about 2013, if that's correct. Does that sound right to you?
Bitcoin, actually closer to 2009, but
okay.
Yeah. And in 2009, I'll tell you a crazy story. In 2009, I said, this is something silly. And somewhere around, I want to say 2010, my brother-in-law started talking to me about, there's this thing, and it was something that he and my sister were like really, really keen, really curious about. And if it's one of those times that if I had listened to my oldest sister and her husband and just went, well, you know what? Let me think about investing in something like this. If I had put $1,000 into it at that point, and I'm talking in 2010, I would be a multi-millionaire right now, because it was selling for $9 a coin, and now it's selling for like whatever it is today, 48,000, something like that, 50. It went up to 58,000 recently. Wow. $9 to 58,000. If I had put $1,000 into it, I looked and I found out recently how much I would have had to put in just to get clear $1 million, and just a few $100s back in 2010. I thought, I've lost a few $100s just eating more pizza than I should have. But anyway, I think it's important to note that this is a great way to have a currency that is not a regulated currency. And what's interesting is the value of Bitcoin is in the fact that it's decentralized and therefore it can't really be fully regulated. When China banned trading and also China tried to ban Bitcoin, both times that they really tried to crack down on it, it went through the roof. And there just seems to be an advantage when a government tries to attack a cryptocurrency. If I started my own cryptocurrency, I'd want to do something where all the governments were trying to ban it, because then it would just absolutely go through the roof.
See, that's a good point. When it comes to agorism, and this is not something to hold to 100% of the time, but sometimes it is important to see what is government trying to stop. Why are they trying to stop it? Because with the corrupting influence of the state, there are times that they're trying to stop the stuff that's good. Sometimes they're trying to stop stuff that's bad. However, we have to look at the consequences, at the results of the policy or the program, not at the intentions. We know that from reading Friedman. So, things like, oh, well, I don't want kids smoking drugs, so they try to go for the war on drugs. Well, no one on this podcast wants kids to have access to drugs. That's a good point. However, we understand that the law of unintended consequences, which is kind of what Hazlitt goes into. I'm looking at the Mises.org library right now, and over and over when I look at Econ 101 and Austrian economics, it's recommended. I mean, it's a great book. I do recommend it. He doesn't just talk about unintended consequences, though. He also talks about don't help one group over another, which is kind of what tariffs do, which is interesting. He really takes tariffs seriously, but he takes the principles of kind of what you said earlier. Supply and demand are laws, and we can try to ignore that, but we're going to have a very hard life and a very bad economy if we do. It is very important to live in the reality of it. I mean, you kind of were saying with the analogy of the guy on the top of the skyscraper, you can say, well, I believe I can fly. Gravity doesn't exist. But if you do, you're going to be really, really hurt. Peter, I never give the whole pie away. So you're talking about zero-sum economics, like one pie. That's pretty great. I like it.
Right. And Will Detmering made a good comment here on the he's watching us at YouTube, and he says, buy more cryptocurrency. Josh, you mind if I already told you the story, but you mind if I share it again with regards to how I happened to find a good bit in an account?
Please go ahead.
All right, I'll try to make it quick. Oh man, Peter, that's hilarious. Okay, so back in 2013, towards the end of 2013, a friend of mine who's a real freedom fighter, was trying to help feed poor people in Caracas, Venezuela, whose government had literally weaponized starvation. And this is very similar to how that good Uncle Joe, and I'm talking about Stalin now, had weaponized starvation. That Uncle Joe in the Ukraine. And they call that Holodomor, and the famines of Holodomor were extreme. And we're talking people were actually, giving into cannibalism just to survive. It was unbelievable. But down in Venezuela, a lot more recently, they were literally eating out of the trash, and that's not very safe either. And so he said, listen, if you send us $50 worth of cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, I'll help turn that into like 75 meals, and we'll feed people out of that we're eating out of the trash. And I saw how he took $40 and turned it into 60 meals, and I had just done that. And so I said, okay, well, how do I go about doing that? And he said, get a Coinbase account and buy some cryptocurrency. You mean like Bitcoin? I said, sure, no problem. Went and did that, and I'm getting ready to send it to him. And and I don't know what at that moment in time, happened. But it was always my intent to send it to him. And then not too long afterwards, he goes on national television talking about free markets. I'm sitting here thinking, how in the world can you do that in Venezuela? And the answer to that was, you can't, because soon after that, he became an enemy of the state and he had to escape his own country. So my contact went away for how do I go about helping people that are starving. And my contact down there just disappeared. Well, I totally forgot about the fact I bought $50 of cryptocurrency back in December of 2013 until this past January. And I opened, I say, I'm going to start a cryptocurrency account and start putting some money in this because now it's looking interesting. And I go into to go ahead and do that. And I look at my Coinbase and it says this email address is already in use. Hey, this is another thing for use the same email address long term. Okay. I said, what do you mean? And I looked and I said, it said recover account, send information. And after a couple of steps, I was able to open it up. And I looked, and that $50 had turned into $2,500. Mm-hmm. And I looked and I said, somebody's messing with my account. I didn't have any balance in here before. I don't even remember buying anything. And I looked, and sure enough, it was that one purchase of $50, and it turned into $2,500. And I sat there and ignored it for about a month, kind of surprised by it by a month. And about a month later, it was at 4,800. So in about a month, it was about 23 days of a steep rise where I was actually increasing by $100 a day by not doing anything. And now I'm sold. Investments are a great idea. Now I would say that if you can't handle her dropping by 20%, you don't deserve her 600% increase. So it will go up, it will come down, but it seems like that was a pretty good investment in 2013. And now I'm always doing, I call it Bitcoin math. Cryptocurrency math always goes like this. Man, I put 50 in back then. I wish I had put in 500. Because if I had put in 500 instead of 50, I would have $250,000 instead of, I would add $25,000,
Are you breaking up or am I? I'm having a hard time understanding you.
20,000 back then would be well over $1 million. There's just, as I keep doing the figures, I'm going, why do I not put more in? And so I think what Will says right here is really.
I can't hear you. Are we having technical problems? Can anyone else hear me?
Will says is buy more cryptocurrency is true all the time. Back to you, Josh.
Am I on? I've had some technical problems. I'm not sure if it's your internet connection or my internet connection, or if the NSA is trying to interrupt two agorists talking about freedom. But whatever it is that's going on, we continue to live free of the state, don't we? So we're going to continue the podcast. Well, I like what you said. I agree with you. When I first heard about crypto or Bitcoin specifically, I didn't know what to think. There's been experts that have come out and said, no, it's kind of like playing the lottery.
Yes, I can hear you, like Josh.
But the thing about that is that I hope everyone else can hear me too. I know Matt can. He just said he can. But
it's just a great lag, and this is usually
Bitcoin,
when we cut it.
We have to consider how this functions. A lot of the so-called experts that are talking about Bitcoin. Okay, thanks, Justico, appreciate it. A lot of the experts don't understand what Bitcoin is. It took me quite a while to understand it. I had a friend named Travis who actually lives in, we're Porcupine Pundits in South Carolina. Someone in the area was able to speak to me about Bitcoin specifically. And that was very informative, very educational. Someone else that, a couple other technologists or people that have talked about Bitcoin and what it is. And really the way I view it is very agorist in nature. It is trying to move away from the corrupting influence of the Federal Reserve. It is a currency that is not centrally controlled. So with that being said, you have to consider, because there is responsibility there. As Matt has mentioned, there is Coinbase.com, and you need to make sure you're watching it, and you need to make sure that it is secure. He mentioned email. You don't want to use an email that is not secure. You want to make sure that you can access it easily. You can access your account in Coinbase easily. So there's responsibility in not having the Fed or a bank running your money or backing your money on its own. But there's a line from Thomas Jefferson, I forget the exact quote, but something about not having safety, but enjoying the boisterous seas of liberty. And similarly, when it comes to, we can think about this money-wise, that Benjamin Franklin said those who would exchange liberty and in return for a little safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And I've seen one such quote say, and will get neither. It is important to think of that. That doesn't just apply to ththings like civil liberties or the NSA spying, which I've already joked about, but it applies to money too. You can have a money that is run by central government, or you can have a money that is gold, silver, cryptocurrencies, things of that nature. And not every person who is an agorist or a libertarian is for Bitcoin, but we are pitching this to you. Consider it. Do some research on it. Message Matt or myself about it, and we will have a discussion with you about it. We encourage further conversation. Like Matt said earlier, we don't know everything. We don't have all the answers. There's a text line right now. If you have questions or if you have comments, then do so, or comment on the live video right now. We'd love to hear from you. But yes, Matt, what do you think? Are you very familiar at all with other cryptocurrencies such as Monero or Ethereum? Are they similar to Bitcoin? Do you think they're more secure, less secure? How do they function? Are you muted, Matt? I think you might be muted. Or it's just a lagging connection. I'm not sure. I can see you, but I can't hear you. Thank you, Peter, for saying great discussion. Hello. Yeah, hold on. Let me connect my Bluetooth.
Wow. Okay, Josh, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. I think there's just quite a bit of lag here. All right. Do I have a thumbs up? Can you hear me? Go like this. I can hear you.
I can hear you.
No? Maybe I'm muted. So, Josh, can you hear me?
I can hear you through the phone, but not through the tablet. Will do.
No, I'm not.
Everyone,
I'm not muted.
thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate everyone turning in. I can hear you. Hold on. Say it again. I can hear you through the tablet now, but I couldn't. Right. There was a 2-minute dead silence on your end.
Okay. Or maybe it was what about end, now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
At all? I'll get really loud. Hey, kids, keep it down. Not at all? Yeah.
I can hear you. Yeah, we're on a lag right now, folks. I apologize for
the no idea
technical difficulties today. I can hear Matt. I don't know if the audience can hear Matt.
Let me try this here. Hold on just
his
a second
video's
here.
not moving, even though I think his audio is. But everyone, I apologize for technical difficulties. We're coming in on 45 minutes or 44 minutes right now. So we appreciate the comments, the activities on here. We want to continue to do this podcast. We want to continue to
what about
educate you
now?
on
Can you hear me
agorism,
now?
on free market economics. Yeah, Matt, I can hear you.
No.
See, he's not getting my audio, I don't think. But
So,
if you interested in following
wow.
this discussion, please follow
So
Porcupine
besides the,
Pundit on YouTube. Please find Porcupine
technical
Pundit and
issues,
Liberty on Caffeine on
just give me a
Facebook.
thumbs up
We
if
really
you
appreciate you listening.
can hear me now. Josh?
I can hear you, Matt. He's telling me to do a thumbs up, so I can hear you.
Not at all.
But folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I've got a hard out, but if you want to reach out to me, please reach out to Will Detmering and Matt Wobble. And if you want to establish contact with me or want me back on the podcast, thank you so much to Will. Thank you so much to Matt. Thank
close
you so
it
much.
out then. All right, I'll try this way. Alrighty now, Josh. I'm going to go this route, Josh, so I can talk to you. See if you can pick up on this. Okay, you can hear me now, right? Woo. Well, it's a massive amount of lag. Okay.